Chapter 11: The Universal Quest for Significance. To look behind or to look up front is not as important as to look inside. Ralph Waldo Emerson. A Cherokee elder sitting with his grandchildren told them, "In every life, there is a terrible fight. A fight between two wolves. One is evil. He is fear, anger, envy, greed, arrogance, self-pity, resentment, and deceit. The other is good. Joy, serenity, humility, confidence, generosity, truth, gentleness, and compassion." A child asked, "Grandfather, which wolf will win?" The elder looked him in the eye. "The one you care to feed." A traditional Native American tale. As Thoreau lay upon his deathbed in 1862, a friend asked him whether he had made his peace with God. The poet responded in Zen-like fashion, "I was not aware we had quarreled." What we are looking for is what is looking. Saint Francis of Assisi. Within you there is a stillness and a sanctuary to which you can retreat at any time and be yourself. Herman Hesse. Why are you unhappy? Because 99.9% of everything you think and everything you do is for yourself, and there isn't one. V. Fu Fai. Gertrude Stein, American author, poet, art collector, who lived most of her life in France, died in 1946 at the age of 72 from stomach cancer. As she was being wheeled into the operation room for surgery, she asked her associate Alice Toklas, "What is the answer?" When Toklas did not answer, Stein said, "In that case, what is the question?" These were her last words of wisdom. Right self-effort is a part of divine will. Yoga Vashishta. The first 100 years are the hardest. A Persian saying. What your mind does not know, your eyes do not see. A Hindu saying. Integrating the 7 gifts. In the foregoing pages, we have presented 7 gifts as habits of mind that lead to significance and fulfillment in life. We started with pure motivation because it serves as a necessary foundation to all other gifts. If our motivation is impure, we will not really be able to practice gratitude, generosity, harmlessness, and selfless service, because our self-interest will always be lurking in the background. The gift of pure motivation, therefore, acts as a salutary check on the deeply ingrained human tendency toward self-centeredness. The key to fulfillment lies in freeing oneself from the shackles of this fundamental human disability. Most great spiritual traditions of the world are in agreement on this vital point. Pursuing our self-interest in everything we do comes naturally to all of us. It is hardwired into our psyche due to millions of years of biological struggle for self-preservation. To a point, it has served us well, albeit in the biological sense. However, even when our self-preservation is not at stake, it remains operative in myriad subtle ways. It is responsible for much of humanity's suffering through deception, greed, exploitation, and war. In nature, however, cooperation plays at least as important a role as competition in the so-called struggle for existence. It is possible to outgrow our rampant tendency of self-centeredness by practicing the gifts of gratitude, generosity, harmlessness, and selfless service. Paradoxically, in sharing these gifts with others, we ultimately bestow them on ourselves. Pure motivation is the master key that opens the door to all other blessings. The dichotomy of being and becoming. As human beings, we are caught in the constant dichotomy of being and becoming. The world of becoming operates outside and is swarmed with competition, comparison, and conflict. It is a race with no visible finish line. The world of being lies within us and is infused with self-knowledge, contentment, and contemplation. It is already within our reach and ever attained. Struggle for becoming eventually leads to unhappiness, anxiety, stress, strain, and strife. Steady abidance in our being is the road that verily leads to happiness, peace, serenity, and fulfillment. This, then, is the real irony. We squander our precious human life in the sole servitude of the economic grind called making a living, without really finding much time to live. A classic case of all becoming and no being, and a sorry sacrifice of abiding ends for transient means. What really matters most? The art of being. Where should one begin if one were to attain what really matters in life? We are repeatedly told that if we seek the big things first, all other things will be added unto us. In the following pages, we will explore this vital subject from different angles, through the medium of wisdom stories. The following story presents a valuable message in this regard and serves as a good starting point in our quest about what really matters in life. Art of time management. Get the big rocks in first. A philosophy professor stood before his class with some items on the table in front of him. When the class began, wordlessly, he picked up a very large and empty mayonnaise jar and proceeded to fill it with rocks, about 2 inches in diameter. He then asked the students if the jar was full. They agreed that it was. So, the professor then picked up a box of pebbles and poured them into the jar. He shook the jar lightly. The pebbles, of course, rolled into the open areas between the rocks. He then asked the students again if the jar was full. They agreed it was. The professor picked up a box of sand and poured it into the jar. Of course, the sand filled up everything else. He then asked once more if the jar was full. The students responded with a unanimous yes. "Now," said the professor, "I want you to recognize that this jar represents your life. The rocks are the important things. Your family, your partner, your health, your children. Things that if everything else was lost and only they remained, your life would still be full. The pebbles are the other things that matter, like your job, your house, your car. The sand is everything else, the small stuff. If you put the sand into the jar first, there is no room for the pebbles or the rocks. The same goes for your life," he said. "If you spend all your time and energy on the small stuff, you will never have room for the things that are important to you. Pay attention to the things that are critical to your happiness. Play with your children. take your partner out dancing. There will always be time to go to work, clean the house, give a dinner party, and fix the disposal. Take care of the rocks first, the things that really matter. Set your priorities, the rest is just sand. Reality, a mere reflection of our own self. Seeking the right things assumes being the right seeker first. We create our own reality and carry it with us wherever we go. It has been observed that we do not see the world the way the world is. We see it the way we are. The world is merely a reflection of who we are. If we have an abundant mind and a generous heart, life invariably draws us towards circumstances where these qualities can be reinforced and nurtured. The converse is equally true. The following two stories admirably underscore this essential point. We carry our reality with us. An old man sat outside the walls of a great city. When travelers approached, they would ask the old man, "What kind of people live in this city?" The old man would answer, "What kind of people live in the place where you come from?" If the travelers answered, "Only bad people live in the place where we came from," the old man would reply, "Continue on. You will find only bad people here." But if the travelers answered, "Good people live in the place where we come from," then the old man would say, "Enter, for here too you will find only good people." This story is also an excellent illustration, albeit indirectly, of Gandhi's great maxim on change. Be the change you want to see in the world. If we want to see more goodness and harmony around us, we have to first enshrine goodness and harmony in our own life. The following Japanese folktale reinforces the message that all our experiences are mere reflections of who we are. House of 1,000 Mirrors. Long ago, in a small, faraway village, there was a place known as the House of 1,000 Mirrors. A happy little dog learned of this place and decided to visit. When he arrived, he bounced happily up the stairs to the doorway of the house. He looked through the doorway with his ears lifted high and his tail wagging as fast as it could. To his great surprise, he found himself staring at 1,000 other happy little dogs, with their tails wagging just as fast as his. He smiled a great smile and was answered with 1,000 great smiles, just as warm and friendly. As he left the house, he thought to himself, "This is a wonderful place. I will come back and visit it often." In this same village, another little dog that was not quite as happy as the first one decided to visit the house. He slowly climbed the stairs and hung his head low as he looked into the door. When he saw the 1,000 unfriendly-looking dogs staring back at him, he growled at them and was horrified to see 1,000 little dogs growling back at him. As he left, he thought to himself, "That is a horrible place, and I will never go back there again." All the faces in the world are mirrors, and the world is a mere reflection of our own self. Peace of mind. It seems that happiness is related to peace of mind as success is related to significance. In our quest for our own happiness, we try to devote our talents to make ourselves happy. As in our quest for success, we try to pursue success for ourselves. Peace of mind, on the other hand, represents a state of significance that results from devoting ourselves unconditionally to the well-being of others. As mentioned in the beginning of this book, happiness and success, as commonly interpreted, have to be pursued. Peace and significance have to ensue. In his classic book, titled Peace of Mind, Joshua Loth Liebman records an interesting conversation with his old friend on what matters most in life. Once, as a young man, I undertook to draw up a catalogue of the acknowledged goods of life. I set down my inventory of earthly desirables: health, love, talent, power, riches, and fame. Then I proudly showed it to a wise elder. An excellent list, and set down in reasonable order, said my old friend. But you have omitted the one important ingredient, lacking which your list becomes an intolerable burden. He crossed out my entire schedule. Then he wrote down 3 syllables: peace of mind. This is the gift that God reserves for his special proteges, he said. Talent and health he gives to many. Wealth is commonplace, fame not rare, but peace of mind he bestows charily. Peace as our natural state. Peace is our natural state. That is perhaps why, whenever we are in pain or distress, we want to get out of the pain or stress as quickly as possible and get back to our natural state of peace and comfort. Whereas, when we are happy and peaceful, we do not want that state to ever end. But how do we get to that still point within? One is tempted to ask. There is nothing that one has to do to reach it, we are told. One has just to be in touch with that innate state. This seems to be the ultimate paradox of human life. Ultimate paradox. Accomplishing the accomplished. I once asked a sage, how can one attain a state of stillness, a state of abiding inner peace? What spiritual practice or discipline should one engage in to get to it? The sage clarified the point with a counter question. Throughout your life, you play myriad roles such as a father, a son, a husband, a teacher, a friend, and so forth. But underneath of it all, you know that you are a human being. What spiritual practice or discipline do you need to realize that you are a human being? Asked the sage. I stood speechless. The sage looked me in the eyes. There was an unspeakable intensity in his gaze. In that split second, which felt like an eternity, time stood still, and something significant had been conveyed forever. No further words were necessary. In fact, anything we do with our volitional mind takes us away from this innate state of being. In Indian philosophy, this natural state is expressed as the being, consciousness, bliss absolute, meaning Sat Chit Anand. Abiding or being in our natural state of pure, witnessing consciousness, awareness, is the key to bliss, peace, and harmony. Happiness, as we normally understand it, comes from outside, and we have to do something to obtain it. Peace of mind, on the other hand, is our natural inner state, and we do not have to do anything to revel in it. The peace we experience during deep sleep every night is a testimony to this amazing discovery. During deep sleep, we devoid of our awareness. During deep sleep, we are devoid of our awareness of body, mind, and senses. We are blissfully oblivious to all our possessions of the waking state, such as wealth, power, fame, etc. And yet, we all experience a deep peace during sleep, unlike any other experience that we have. Everyone looks forward to it every night, night after night. This is nature's gentle reminder that peace is our very nature. The purpose of the sleep analogy is not to suggest that one should pass one's life in blissful slumber, experiencing unalloyed peace. The idea is to live one's waking life with the keen understanding that peace is an inner condition, our natural state, and that we do not have to do anything special to attain it, except just be it. With a nod to Shakespeare, we can agree, to be or not to be? That is the question. Does happiness reside in the objects of desire? The basic assumption behind all pursuits of happiness is the belief that happiness resides in a desirable object or situation. A little reflection will show that happiness does not reside in the object or the situation. If it were so, then that object or situation would always be the source of happiness for everyone. It is common knowledge that the same object or situation evokes different responses in different people. Even the same object or situation can evoke a different response in the same person at different times. If happiness were a quality inherent in objects, then everyone would desire all objects in the same manner all the time. And all the people who possess those objects would be universally happy. Our experience and observation tell us this is not the case. This analysis can apply to people, places, and situations. Thus, through proper inquiry, we should clearly determine that abiding fullness, peace, security, and happiness cannot come from objects or things that are themselves subject to change. If happiness does not reside in objects or situations, could it then be a quality of the mind? Since the mind seeks completion, which is happiness, outside of itself, happiness cannot be its intrinsic quality. The mind, however, assumes itself to be incomplete and therefore seeks completion. Also, if happiness were a quality of the mind, then, when the mind is resolved, as in deep sleep, happiness would not be experienced. Experience shows the reverse to be the case. Deep sleep is a state that all of us desire to enter, because of the sense of completion obtained there. In deep sleep, our mind completely subsides. When the mind is resolved, happiness manifests. Thus, happiness cannot be a quality residing only in the individual mind. Now, the question arises, if happiness is not a quality of an object, nor a quality of the individual mind, where does it come from? When a desired object is obtained, then the desiring mind is granted a calm moment, thus allowing us to be content with ourselves. Thus, happiness manifests as fullness, which is but the nature of the self, when a particular desire within the mind is resolved. Therefore, happiness does not reside in objects, situations, nor in the individual mind. Rather, it is a quality of fullness, the very intrinsic nature of the self. It is for the sake of the self alone that every object is dear to us. This is the psychology of happiness, the gift of discovering the peace of mind within the self. One cannot know peace. One can only feel it or experience it in the depth of one's being. One can only be it. The good news is that the real peace and fulfillment that we search for outside of ourselves actually lies within all of us. And we come fully equipped to undertake this august journey and reach our true destination. Searching for peace is like searching for one's glasses everywhere, when they have been perched on our nose all along. Interestingly, one even forgets that one has been searching for them while unknowingly looking through them. The following story of the musk deer splendidly illustrates this point. The enchanted deer. Once, while walking in a forest, a deer became enchanted by a sweet, magical fragrance. The enchanted deer spent its entire life searching everywhere in the forest for the source of the fragrance, only to one day fall to the ground completely exhausted. Lying there, curled up, with its head resting on its belly, it realized that the source of the fragrance it had been seeking its whole life was actually the scent of musk coming from within itself. Our true treasures lie within us all. We just have to look in the right place. We have drifted too far from our essence, outward in search of haunts of happiness. All we need to do is to make a U-turn and return home. The following story warns us regarding the futility of searching for peace afar, chasing shadows and getting constantly hurt in the process. A bird and the mystic rose. A certain bulbul bird was in love with a mystic rose. Every morning, he would leave his nest in search of this rose. All day, he would roam about in every direction and then return to his nest tired and disheartened. One day, the bird saw the rose inside a room made of glass. The bird could see it through the glass walls and was tempted to get it right away. Luckily, he found a side door ajar and flew in. This was a mysterious room, full of mirrors all around. The bird could see the mystic rose reflected in every direction, everywhere in the room. The bird started flying toward one of the rose's images reflected in the mirror, thinking it to be the real thing. He flew into the mirror and fell on the floor. He got up again, determined to get his heart's desire. He flew toward another reflection of the mystic rose and again met the same fate. This went on several times until the bird was wounded, his beak bleeding very badly. The bird lay exhausted on the floor in the middle of the room and soon fell asleep. When the bird woke up after resting a while, he saw the real rose hanging right above him. His gaze remained fixed on it, wondering if it was the real rose or just one of its myriad reflections, like he had experienced before. The bird gathered his courage and flew straight at the real mystic rose, finally to be united with its heart's desire, once and for all. Most of our struggles with becoming are of the nature of chasing shadows, not unlike the bird in the story flying at the reflections of the mystic rose. We also keep getting hurt in the process of chasing false goods, until life in its infinite compassion presents us with our heart's authentic desire. Practicing the 7 habits of fulfillment attracts the universe's infinite generosity, guidance, and compassion to lead us to the abode of inner peace. The significance of significance. The quest for significance has been one of the perennial stirrings of the human heart. Why is it that, after many millennia, the search for meaning still strikes us as fresh and has to be newly won by every serious seeker? It has been observed that there are basically 2 types of people: those who have discovered their purpose and those who have not yet discovered their purpose. Sooner or later, we all have to ask this question of questions. What is the purpose of my life? Why am I here? Until we find an answer to this most fundamental of all questions for ourselves and by ourselves, we will remain strangers to true fulfillment, peace, and significance. The importance of significance is so great that even animals are not untouched by this need. Search and rescue handlers and trainers learned a lot from the use of dogs in Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. The dogs worked tirelessly and found no survivors, and so got little reward. At a deeper level, dogs felt lack of meaning behind their search. The dogs started getting depressed by the 3rd day since no more survivors were to be found underneath the heaps of corpses. The rescue handlers devised a trick. They covered themselves with gowns and masks and hid themselves under the debris so that the dogs could find at least some survivors to carry on their work meaningfully. Such is the power of purposeful work. Camus put it so well: without work, all life goes rotten. But when work is soulless, life stifles and dies. Implications for leaders. It is important to note that the journey from success to significance, from happiness to harmony, is not only essential for personal mastery, it is also critical in developing and leading others. This represents the essence of leadership, devoting ourselves selflessly to a cause greater than ourselves. Put differently, serving the well-being of others and working for the benefit of many constitute the raison d'être of leaders. In giving of ourselves unconditionally and serving others selflessly, we truly redeem our existence and firmly plant our feet on the path that leads to peace and harmony, fulfillment, meaning, and significance. Everyone dies, but few live. Life is short, art is long. That is the tragedy of human life. During a memorial service I attended, the minister spoke of the uncertainty and brevity of human life and the consequent need to live meaningfully all the days of our lives. He explained that on each tombstone, after the name of the deceased, the lifespan of a person is denoted by the year of birth and the year of death, separated by a hyphen. That's all our life is, just a little hyphen between the birth and death. With certain urgency in his voice, he added poignantly, "We, all of us, are going to be soon reduced to a hyphen on the tombstone. How you hyphenate your hyphen makes all the difference in what truly matters most in life. And that alone is what we all leave behind." The following 2 stories convey this message. The first story is about Alexander the Great, known as the most powerful military general and conqueror of the ancient world. Before he turned 30 years old, he had conquered an empire stretching over 3,000 miles from Greece to India. The second story presents a homely conversation between a mother and a daughter and some useful hints on the art of living. The first story conveys the urgency. The second story provides some guidelines on how to address it. Empty Hands, Death of Alexander the Great. At the time of his death, Alexander the Great offered to give half of his kingdom to anyone who could make him live long enough so he could see his mother. All the physicians who had gathered around told him that even if he gave his entire kingdom, they could not add one single breath to his life. Tears welled up in Alexander's eyes. His face saddened, and with a deep sigh, he said, "If only I had known that a breath was so costly a thing, I would never have wasted them in useless pursuits." Then he directed that, during his funeral procession, his hands should be kept out of his coffin, with palms upward, so that the world might take a lesson from the great Alexander, who had planned to conquer the world, but was leaving it with empty hands. Story 2. Carrots, Eggs, and Coffee Beans. A young woman went to her mother and told her about her life and how things were so hard for her. She did not know how she was going to survive and wanted to give up. She was tired of fighting and struggling. It seemed as one problem was solved, a new one arose. Her mother took her to the kitchen. She filled 3 pots with water and placed each on a high fire. Soon the pots came to boil. In the first, she placed carrots. In the second, she placed eggs. And in the last, she placed ground coffee beans. Without saying a word, she let them sit and boil. After 20 minutes, she turned off the burners. She fished the carrots out and placed them in a bowl. She pulled the eggs out and placed them in another bowl. Then she ladled the coffee out and placed it in a bowl. Turning to her daughter, she said, "Tell me what you see." "Carrots, eggs, and coffee," the daughter replied. Her mother brought her closer and asked her to feel the carrots. She did and noted that they were soft. The mother then asked the daughter to take an egg and break it. After pulling off the shell, she observed the hard-boiled egg. Finally, the mother asked the daughter to sip the coffee. The daughter smiled as she tasted its rich aroma. The daughter then asked, "What does it mean, mother?" Her mother explained that each of these objects had faced the same adversity, boiling water, but each reacted differently. The carrot went in strong, hard, and unrelenting. However, after being subjected to the boiling water, it softened and became weak. The egg had been fragile. Its thin outer shell had protected its liquid interior. But after sitting through the boiling water, its inside became hardened. The ground coffee beans were unique, however. After they were in the boiling water, they had changed the water. "Which are you?" she asked her daughter. When adversity knocks on your door, how do you respond? Are you a carrot, an egg, or a coffee bean? Think of this. Who am I? Am I the carrot that seems strong, but with pain and adversity, do I wilt and become soft and lose my strength? Am I the egg that starts with a malleable heart, but changes with the heat? Did I have a fluid spirit, But after a death, a breakup, a financial hardship, or some other trial, have I become hardened and stiff? Does my shell look the same? But on the inside, I am bitter and tough with a stiff spirit and hardened heart? Or am I like the coffee bean? The bean actually changes the hot water, the very circumstance that brings the pain. When the water gets hot, it releases the fragrance and flavor. If you are like the bean, when things are at their worst, you get better and change the situation around you. When the hour is the darkest and trials are their greatest, do you elevate yourself to another level? How do you handle adversity? Are you a carrot, an egg, or a coffee bean? May you have enough happiness to make you sweet, enough trials to make you strong, enough sorrow to keep you human, and enough hope to make you happy. The happiest of people don't necessarily have the best of everything. They just make the most of everything that comes along their way. The brightest future will always be based on a forgotten past. You can't go forward in life until you let go of your past failures and heartaches. When you were born, you were crying and everyone around you was smiling. Live your life so that at the end, you are the one who is smiling and everyone around you is crying. 4 pursuits of life. What do we really want? Consciously or unconsciously, we are all pursuing some goal. This is the most common feature of human existence. What are the possible types of goals that we all seek? Indian philosophy classifies all human pursuits into 4 broad categories: pleasure or kama, security or artha, righteousness or dharma, and freedom or moksha. This classification provides an ideal infrastructure for the accomplishment of all human ends, called purushartha in Sanskrit. The first 3 pursuits are seen as the material goals, while the last pursuit, moksha, is considered the spiritual goal culminating in liberation through self-knowledge. According to this philosophy, all goals of life must lead to the ultimate goal of freedom, because without accomplishing spiritual freedom, human life is not deemed to be fulfilled. Without attaining this spiritual freedom, the complete sense of fulfillment cannot come. There will always be more wants and regrets at the end of one's life. In fact, spiritual freedom alone gives the joyous sense of fulfillment at the time of death. Therefore, the material accomplishments are treated as ancillary goals, while spiritual freedom is considered to be the primary goal and ultimate objective of human life. The pursuit of spiritual freedom comes last because it becomes a direct pursuit only when one has realized the limitations inherent in the first 3 pursuits. The kama is the pursuit of all types of pleasures, such as sensual, intellectual, and aesthetic. The artha is the pursuit of worldly gain or wealth to seek physical, economic, emotional, social, or some other form of security. The dharma is the pursuit of values or righteousness, and the moksha is the pursuit of spiritual liberation or freedom from all limitations and dependence. It is important to note that dharma underpins and regulates the other 3 pursuits to ensure their propriety. Therefore, according to Hindu scriptures, the right order of these pursuits should be dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. The ancient seers were very keen to ensure that our pursuit of pleasure and security should be guided by the spirit of righteousness and conscientiousness. Indian philosophy says that all of these are legitimate ends of life. We will consider the first three pursuits, pleasure, security, and righteousness, as one category, since they share more or less the same characteristics and limitations. We will find out that they all require efforts in time and space and produce only limited results. Our touchstone will be to see how each of these measure up to our ultimate goal of seeking lasting fulfillment and of freedom from all limitations. First and foremost, we all naturally seek pleasure. However, we all eventually come to the realization that pleasure is too trivial to satisfy our total being. Besides, as stated before, no pleasure consistently satisfies us with the same level of intensity over time. Even the most refined type of aesthetic pleasures, such as music and literature, lose their intensity over time. There comes a time, wrote Huxley, when one asks even of Shakespeare, even of Beethoven, is this all? Anantanand Rambachan, an Advait scholar, provides a succinct analysis of the reasons why we find sense gratification to be fleeting and ultimately unsatisfying. The sense object is subject to time and change. The relevant sense organ is gradually worn out through indulgence, and the mind grows saturated and bored with repetitiveness. Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard described more pointedly his disenchantment with aesthetic pleasures in his book Sickness unto Death. In the bottomless ocean of pleasure, he wrote in his journal, "I have sounded in vain for a spot to cast an anchor. I have felt the almost irresistible power with which one pleasure drags another after it, the kind of adulterated enthusiasm which it is capable of producing, the boredom, the torment which follow, through worldly gains with its threefold formulation of wealth, power, and fame." Although the effects of this pursuit may seem to last longer than the pursuit of pleasure, they are still not beyond the vagaries of time and limitations. Consider this poignant observation of Tolstoy, who, at the height of his career, with wealth, fame, and power all accomplished, found it all sham and mockery. All this took place at a time when, so far as all my outer circumstances went, I ought to have been completely happy. I had a good wife who loved me and whom I loved, good children, and a large property which was increasing with no pains taken on my part. I was more respected by my kinsfolk and acquaintance than I had ever been. I was loaded with praise by strangers, and without exaggeration, I could believe my name already famous. And yet I could give no reasonable meaning to any actions of my life. And I was surprised that I had not understood this from the very beginning. My state of mind was as if some wicked and stupid jest was being played upon me by someone. One can live only so long as one is intoxicated, drunk with life. But when one grows sober, one cannot fail to see that it is all a stupid cheat. Of course, one can perfunctorily dismiss Tolstoy's assessment as too pessimistic or too cynical, yet one cannot deny the force with which he analyzes and lays bare the terror of the human situation. If we carefully look at the pursuits of pleasure, security, and values, we realize that they are all limited and time-bound in their ultimate bidding. Even when one has had them all, one still feels, with Tolstoy, the gnawing sense of incompleteness, that something is still missing. Bhikkhunanamoli, a preeminent Buddhist scholar of Theravada Buddhism, concurs. Close examination of existence finds always something of the qualities of the mirage and of the paradox behind the appearance. The ends can never be made quite to meet. Eventually, it seems every discerning human being comes to realize with Simone Weil that there is no true good here below, that everything that appears to be good in this world is finite, limited, wears out, and once worn out, leaves necessity exposed in all its nakedness. One does not have to come to this acute perceptiveness of the terror of the human predicament to agree with Arthur Schopenhauer that the business of life does not seem to cover its expenses. Bringing out the inherent poignancy of human existence, Dogen, a 13th century Zen master, said, "Flowers fall, weeds grow. Such is life." Indian philosophy furnishes a twofold explanation of the grim assessment of human predicament, furnished by Tolstoy, Huxley, Weil, and Schopenhauer. The first reason we find the pursuit of pleasure, security, and values to be ultimately unfulfilling is that the happiness they seem to provide does not really reside in them, even if it appears to at first. If this were not the case, we should always feel an invariable intensity of gratification from our objects of desire. Our experience tells us that our perceived happiness derived from objects, people, and places changes over time. What really happens is that the acquired object of our desire temporarily relieves the agitation in our mind and heart that we felt from its lack. When we obtain the object of our desire, we feel happy for a while, until our satiety is assailed again by another desire that takes the place of the previously fulfilled desire. So, the happiness we seem to experience temporarily actually comes from within, to the appeasement of the anxiety we were feeling for not having the object of our desire. This is one reason why we find the material goals ultimately unsatisfying. The second and perhaps most important reason we are ultimately unfulfilled by the pursuit of pleasure, security, and values is that they are only incidental goals that lead to the ultimate goal of freedom or moksha. And for that very reason, they are inherently unsatisfactory. Their inherent limitation lies in the fact that they can only provide finite results and can never satisfy our total being, which longs for freedom from all limitations and dependence. In fact, they are the contributing causes of our bondage according to Indian philosophy, which postulates the fourth human pursuit as freedom from the first three pursuits: limitations of pleasure, wealth, and values. At first, the foregoing conclusion may seem counterintuitive, if not blatantly unacceptable, but it isn't really. Let's take a closer look. According to Indian philosophy, material pursuits suffer from three inherent limitations or defects, also known as doshatrayam, as they are: mixed with pain, dukkha, mishritatvam; dissatisfaction causing, atriptikratvam; dependence causing, bandhagatvam. To explain, the results of the pursuit of pleasure, wealth, and values are mixed with pain. Pain involved in their acquisition, pain associated with their preservation, and ultimately pain resulting from their separation. The second limitation is that, with any amount of acquisition of these goals, there will not be total satisfaction. because finite plus finite equals finite only. Dissatisfaction will continue, whatever the extent of the accomplishment. The third limitation is that material pursuits can cause emotional dependence. For example, the pursuit of pleasure, security, and values can create two types of bondage. First, when the object of our desire is present, it creates stress of handling the object and strain of relating to the person. Second, when the object of our desire is absent, we feel empty and lonely. When we do not have the objects of our desire, we crave them. And when we have them, we crave freedom from them. So, we are not very sure whether we really want them or not. Either way, there seems to be a problem here. This, says Indian philosophy, is the ultimate tyranny of our mundane existence, samsara. In sum, the material pursuits may lead to weariness of spirit, as they, in and of themselves, are not ultimately satisfying or liberating. When the point of weariness is reached, one starts wondering if there is something beyond the finite, limited, and time-bound pursuits of pleasure, security, and values. This is the point of departure that the Buddha and all other seers and sages came to. Here is what the Buddha said regarding this seminal point. There is, O monks, an unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, unformed. Were there not, O monks, this unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, unformed, there would be no escape from the world of the born, originated, created, formed. Udana 8.3. This is the point of realization that every serious seeker of truth comes to eventually. And this is exactly where the true journey of self-knowledge begins. We all seek fullness of being. It does not require superhuman intelligence to conclude that things that are inherently insecure, finite, and transient cannot give infinite happiness and security. Indian philosophy explains that these pursuits are ultimately dissatisfying because, deep down, what we really have been seeking all along is complete freedom from limitations and dependence. We all seek a fullness of being, Purnatvam. An important verse in Chanda Yoga Upanishad 7.23.1 puts it well. There is no joy in the finite. The infinite alone is joy. Na alpe sukham asti, bhumeva sukham. In other words, we are all indirectly engaged in the pursuit of spiritual freedom. At this point begins the true quest for limitless being, limitless knowledge, and limitless joy. Indian philosophy calls it Brahmand, the absolute, infinite, pure consciousness. Knowing Brahmand, one becomes Brahmand. Brahmavit Brahmeva Bhavati, Mundak Upanishad 3.2.9, and one transcends all sorrow. Finally, only by knowing Brahmand can one transcend death. There is no other way to cross over. With the knowledge of Brahmand or Atman comes the freedom from all limitations, the supreme purpose of all our pursuits. This freedom does not reside solely in objects, people, or places of our desire. Rather, in our final quest for fulfillment, we all seek intrinsic freedom from the material pursuits. Evaluation of experience regarding 4 pursuits. Indian philosophy recommends that we should carefully look at the desirability of all the pursuits and determine what one really needs to do to attain the invariable condition of fulfillment. Here is an important Vedantic verse that captures the fundamental human predicament and also suggests a way out. Pariksha lokan karmachitan brahmano nirvedam ayan nasti akratah kratena tad vijnanantrathen sagurum eva bhigache samitpaneh srotriyam brahmananishtam. Munduk Upanishad 1.2.12. After having properly examined the transient nature of all things in the world that are attained through actions, a wise person should acquire a sense of dispassion. That which is not the product of any action cannot be produced by actions. Nothing that is eternal can be produced by what is not eternal. In order to understand that eternal, one should humbly approach a great teacher who is well versed in the Vedas and always absorbed in absolute. The Brihat Aranyak 4.4.9 and Katha 2.3.14 Upanishads confirm Yada sarve pramuchyante kama ye sya hradi shritaha atha mrityo mrito bhavati atra brahma samasnute. When a person completely gives up all the obsessive compulsive cravings he is harboring in his heart, he moves from the mortal realm to that of the imperishable and enjoys real joy and fulfillment in the absolute truth. According to Vedanta, all human achievements fall into two broad categories: A. Attainment of not yet attained, and B. Attainment of the already attained. As stated above, Vedanta divides all human goals into four, called Purusharthas: Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. The first three human pursuits, Dharma, Artha, Kama, that is, ethics, security and pleasure, belong to the first category. They require effort in time and space and can only produce finite results. The fourth human goal, moksha or spiritual freedom, then perhaps belongs to the second category and is ever attained, only hidden from the seeker by mere self-ignorance. And the quest for moksha is like the search of the proverbial possessor of glasses looking for glasses, when they have been resting on his nose all along. If moksha were the product of human efforts, it will then fall in the first category and be still, finite and limited. A mature person recognizes from the close examination of his own experience that what he has been seeking all along is fullness, and the threefold pursuit of ethics, security and pleasure have failed to provide him that sense of invariable limitlessness. They have only provided limited, unsustainable and transient satisfaction. As the Mundaka Upanishad 1.2.12 states, nothing that is eternal can be produced by what is not eternal. If we have to experience fullness at all times, in all places and situations, then common sense dictates that this state cannot be the product of our limited efforts. Yet, we all have the occasional glimpses of this state of fullness, when the world seems to fall into place without any particular effort on our part, and everything is accepted as is. We experience this daily during our sleep, where we have no consciousness of our possessions, power and fame. And yet, we feel so much at peace, so adequate, full and complete during deep sleep. The state of peaceful fullness felt during sleep and other occasions without any efforts on our part must emanate from our very being. We must be fullness all along. It must be our natural state, which is hidden from us simply because of self-ignorance. Happiness is our natural state because we do not complain about being happy. So, what is needed is knowledge to end our ignorance. It is not a problem of becoming. Rather, it is a question of being. The goal of moksha, therefore, is ever attained. Praptasya prapti. True flowering of self-knowledge. This is where the flowering of self-knowledge becomes truly significant. In a state of equanimity, where the presence of objects and people does not create undue stress and strain in us, and their absence does not create a sense of emptiness and loneliness in us. Self-knowledge removes self-ignorance. That was covering our natural state of limitlessness. This is when we can really enjoy pleasures, security and values, karma, artha and dharma, without anxiety or anticipation. When they are there, we are okay. When they are not there, we are okay. We are fine with objects and people, and we are fine without them. Either way, we are fine because we have achieved the highest goal of equanimity. We have made our peace with the universe. We have arrived. This is called freedom, moksha, that comes from self-knowledge. Rejoicing in the self alone. According to the Bhagavad Gita, that person of steady wisdom, whose mind is unperturbed in sorrow, who is free from longing for delights, and who has gone beyond attachment, fear, and anger, that person attains moksha. One who rejoices only in the self, who is satisfied with the self, who is content in the self alone. For such a person, there is nothing left to do. Such a person has nothing to gain from work done or left undone, and no selfish dependence on any being for any object to serve any purpose. Therefore, remaining unattached, always perform actions which are obligatory. By performing action without attachment, one attains the supreme. Resting in the Absolute, with intellect steady and without delusion, the knower of self neither rejoices in receiving what is pleasant, nor grieves on receiving what is unpleasant. The inner autonomy described in the above verses is the blossoming of self-knowledge that expresses itself in the threefold virtues of acceptance, courage, and discernment, captured beautifully in the Serenity Prayer, also cited in Chapter 9. O Lord, grant me the serenity to accept what I cannot change. Grant me the courage to change what I can change, and grant me the wisdom to know the difference. This equanimity of mind, or samatha, has been extolled as yoga in the Bhagavad Gita. This is the dexterity in human action. As we reach this point, we begin to understand that all the problems of the world are not really caused by the world. Rather, they are caused by our mishandling of the world due to our own self-ignorance. Self-knowledge alone accords the freedom from self-ignorance. Having attained this self-knowledge, one swiftly attains supreme peace. And we have come full circle, gaining the essential self. In the final reckoning, self-knowledge attains our essential self. The uniqueness of this knowledge lies in the fact that, unlike all other forms of knowledge, self-knowledge does not entail any new acquisition of information. It only involves freedom from self-ignorance. The following story illustrates both the predicament of self-ignorance and a way to end it. The missing 10th man. 10 monks crossed a river, and one of them counted their number to see if everyone had safely crossed. To their dismay, one was found missing. Then everyone took their turn at counting, but the result was the same. So they began to lament when a kind passerby inquired what it was all about. On being told what had happened, he readily understood the situation and asked one of them to count again. When he stopped at 9, the passerby said to him, "You are the 10th man." This he repeated with the rest of them. Then they saw their mistake and went away happy. Everyone had left himself out in the counting. Strictly speaking, we cannot know ourselves because we are the self. The seeker is the sought. We are the knowing self, the pure awareness, the subject. And the subject, by definition, can never become the object of knowledge. Like the 10th man in the story, gaining the essential self means realizing our mistake of self-forgetfulness or self-ignorance. The self, like the 10th man in the story, appears initially to be not known through ignorance, but subsequently becomes known through knowledge. From an absolute standpoint, again, like the 10th man in the story, the essential self was never lost to begin with and is ever attained. Attainment of the ever-attained self, therefore, essentially means letting go of our false notion about what we take ourselves to be. That is, a limited body, mind, intellect, complex subject to mortality and unhappiness. It is about chipping away, so to speak, the fabricated edifice of the false I, the imposter self. This special understanding requires courage, the discernment and audacity to reclaim our true heritage. We just have to know ourselves as we truly are. And this requires knowledge, not action. The underlying assumption of this book is that most psychological and emotional stress is caused by our excessive self-centeredness. Self-centeredness is a condition born with a deeply ingrained sense of separateness, anchored in self-ignorance. Self-knowledge is freedom from self-ignorance. When self-ignorance transforms into self-knowledge, our need to maintain our separateness is resolved into the fullness of our being. We no longer feel the gnawing sense of inadequacy, incompleteness, and insecurity. We have arrived at an unassailable stillness, blessed with the fullness of our essential nature. The unique understanding of Vedanta. As may be clear from the foregoing, Vedanta fosters a unique understanding about our real nature. This understanding is called self-knowledge or the knowledge of our real self. Why is it necessary to have this understanding? We have seen that behind our myriad pursuits, we all seek fullness of being or Purnatvam. However, through the evaluation of our experience, we realize that this fullness is not to be found in the mundane pursuits of wealth, security, pleasure, or even values. We discover that the rewards that material pursuits offer are at best short-lived, finite, and subject to change. They all grant some satisfaction to a certain degree, but ultimately leave us with a gnawing sense of incompleteness. In sum, they do not lead to complete freedom or fullness of total being. And amidst all the material proliferation, life continues to seem like a meaningless, boring, and burdensome struggle. This is precisely where Vedanta becomes relevant. Vedanta says that the spiritual freedom we have been seeking all along is not a matter of acquisition, not a result of our doing. It is rather a matter of understanding and being. It is actually our natural state. Our primal error is that we identify ourselves with our body-mind complex, whose limitations we then superimpose on our real nature. In other words, we take the unreal as the real. Vedanta explains that you are not just the limited body-mind complex you take yourself to be. Your real essence is of the nature of pure awareness. As such, your real nature is not subject to the limitations of illness, old age, and death, which are only the attributes of your body-mind complex. Of course, Vedanta does not free us from these limitations per se. It only frees us from the fear and anxiety that we experience as a result of perceiving ourselves as a limited body-mind complex. To be firmly established in this understanding is called spiritual freedom or mukti. Says an important Vedantic verse, if you detach yourself from the body and rest is pure awareness, you will at once be happy, peaceful, and free from bondage. What is the liberating knowledge then that leads to spiritual freedom? And what is the method or discipline that leads to this understanding? 5 axioms of Vedanta. Vedanta encapsulates its conviction and vision into 5 axioms. Number 1. I am the nature of eternal and all-pervading consciousness. Number 2. I am the only source of permanent security, peace, and happiness. Number 3. By my mere presence, I give life to material body, and through body, I experience the material universe. Number 4. I am essentially not affected by any events that take place in my material body and the material universe. Number 5. By forgetting my real nature, I convert the drama of life into a struggle. By remembering my real nature, I convert life into a play, that is, Leela. For the harmonious integration of human personality, Vedanta recommends the following 3-fold spiritual program of Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Number 1. Shravanam or listening. This means systematic study of Vedantic teachings for a length of period with a competent teacher. Number 2. Mananam or reflection. This refers to arriving at a doubt-free knowledge through constant reflection on the teachings. Number 3. Nididhyasanam or contemplative assimilation. This is the process of internalizing, imbibing, or absorbing the teachings by practicing meditative contemplation on the teachings. What should be the subject of our listening, reflection, and contemplation? Vedanta provides precise directions regarding this, as follows. Verily, it is the self that should be realized, should be heard of, reflected on, and meditated upon. By the realization of the self, my dear, through hearing, reflection and meditation, all this is known. And when the self is realized through these processes, everything else becomes known. The practice of threefold discipline is an essential requirement to imbibe the profound truths of Vedanta. Listening to the teachings is analogous to eating the food. Reflecting on the teachings is like chewing the food. And internalizing the teaching is like... While eating and chewing the food may happen rather quickly, digesting the food may take a very long time. Similarly, internalizing the teaching is a gradual process and not a hurried event. Therefore, utmost patience is required in approaching these 3 steps. Once a seer explained to me that it is possible to practice these 3 steps all at once if one is intensely focused. The unconditional promise of Vedanta. Every challenging experience of our life can serve as an ideal opportunity for remembering that our body-mind complex is just a costume, that our real nature is that of pure awareness, that the world is a stage where the drama of our life is taking place, and that our real nature, the screen on which the drama is taking place, is not affected by the show of light and sound. The real test of this understanding is to see the drama as the divine play or Leela, especially when the drama is not going well. Whether the drama is a tragedy or a comedy, it is drama nonetheless. The profound understanding that life is a self-play, Swalila, and the resultant state of freedom from fear, Nirbhay Pada, are the twin fruits of absorbing Advaitic wisdom. This is the unconditional promise of Vedanta, freedom from all fear and sorrow. Wave, ocean, water, our primal illusion. Metaphorically speaking, all spiritual endeavors rest on the assumption of the separateness of the wave and its promptings to become one with the ocean, once and for all. And all spiritual practices and disciplines are geared toward removing the sense of separation. Actually, the very meaning of the word yoga presupposes this. The word yoga literally means yoke, from the Sanskrit root yuj, meaning to join, to tie, to fasten, or to unite. Through the discipline of yoga, therefore, the seeker seeks to unite with the sought. So the felt sense of separation is a precondition to every spiritual endeavor, and the complete cessation of this seeming sense of separation is generally referred to as awakening or enlightenment. If we deeply reflect on the wave-ocean dichotomy, we realize that at no time is a wave not one with the ocean. In and throughout the wave is the water of the ocean. Wave is water, and ocean is water. The waves do not affect the ocean. The wave may change form, but the water is not affected. Wave and water are 2 names but one substance. Both are one, only seemingly different. After all, the wave has no existence separate from the water. The wave really does not have to do anything to become one with the ocean. It has never been separate from the ocean to begin with. Its insistence on being a wave is its only real hurdle. From the absolute point of view, both wave and ocean are just linguistic expediencies. They do not really exist as such in the actual sense. Water is the underlying reality of both the wave and the ocean. any difference between wave and ocean is only apparent to us who see a difference. Therefore, to us, the wave has only to realize its true nature as water. The separate existence of wave and ocean is an operation of the ego, a human invention that has no absolute reality whatsoever. It is an impostor. Still, it has prompted all the troubles, conflicts, and wars in human history. Once it is seen for what it is, an illusion, it subsides and we slip into a mode of being where there is no struggle for maintaining our separateness or one-upness. Freed from the servitude of ego, we enjoy our brief sojourn on this planet as a carnival, as a part of the cosmic grand play called Leela. Understood in this manner, all spiritual practices occur in the realm of make-believe. After all, how could an ego, itself an illusion, ever come upon what is real? But what can I do? The seeker still insists. Sri Ramana Maharishi has provided perhaps the best answer. Be. Just be. Realize your essential nature. You are ocean already. Totality already. Just let go of your insistence on being a wave. That's all. The drop becomes the ocean. The empirical self is only relatively real. It appears real due to self-ignorance. Deluded, it identifies itself with the body, mind, and the senses, and assumes a separative existence like ripples floating on the surface of the ocean. Just as the bubble becomes one with the ocean when it bursts, so also the individual or the empirical self becomes one with the absolute when it frees itself from the bounds of self-ignorance. When self-knowledge dawns in it, through the obliteration of self-ignorance, the empirical self is freed from its individuality and finitude, and its essential nature is realized. It merges itself in the ocean of blissful fullness. The stream of life seems into the ocean of existence. The drop becomes the ocean. Better yet, the drop is the ocean, for it has been one with the ocean all along. That is, the ocean of Sat Chit Anand. Existence, consciousness, bliss, absolute. This is the consummation of human existence. The following story splendidly captures the message, albeit symbolically. The Salt Doll and the Ocean. A salt doll journeyed for thousands of miles over the land until it finally came to the sea. It was fascinated by this strange moving mass, quite unlike anything it had ever seen. "Who are you?" said the salt doll to the sea. The sea smilingly replied, "Come in and see." She first hesitatingly put one foot in and it dissolved. She got scared and asked the sea, "What happened?" The sea replied, "You just gave a part of you to understand my reality." So the doll waded in. The farther it walked into the sea, the more it dissolved, until there was only very little of it left. Before the last bit dissolved, the doll exclaimed in wonder, "Now I know who I am. I am it." Concluding remarks. We have come to the end of this presentation of the 7 gifts of fulfillment. In this chapter, we also broached the subject of what really matters in life. Practicing these gifts cleanses our mind and purifies our heart. We then open ourselves to receive what matters most during our cosmic journey. The underlying assumption of this book has been that Most psychological and emotional stress is caused by our excessive self-centeredness. Self-centeredness is a condition born with a deeply ingrained sense of separateness. The seemingly felt sense of separateness is anchored in a special form of ignorance called self-ignorance. Self-knowledge is freedom from self-ignorance. The road to self-knowledge is paved by the practice of the 7 gifts or habits discussed in the foregoing pages. These gifts are designed to release the strange hold of self-centeredness and prepare the mind to receive the liberating wisdom of self-knowledge. The most glaring fact of our life remains that it is short and the journey of self-discovery is long. There is thus an inherent urgency to redeem it through self-knowledge and fulfillment. One is reminded of Buddha's last words to his long-time disciple Ananda. All composite things are subject to decay. Work out your salvation with diligence. What kind of diligence is the Buddha talking about as he is breathing his last? It can be referred to as wisdom about the ultimate pursuit or end of life. One Vedantic verse puts it under the guise of a seeker's prayer for spiritual freedom. Mukti mantra as follows. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityor ma amritam gamaya. Lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from death to immortality. Brihad Aranyak Upanishad 1.3.28. We again turn to the metapsychologist, the Buddha, for a final word about diligence in life's means and ends. During one of his myriad discourses, the Buddha explains that there are 4 types of people in the world. Those who are running from darkness toward darkness, those who are running from light toward darkness, those who are running from darkness toward light, and those who are running from light toward light. The first type of person is ignorant, surrounded by darkness, and does not possess good qualities of head and heart, such as wisdom and generosity. Every time he encounters an unfavorable situation, he becomes upset and tries to blame others for his troubles, thereby compounding his misery. He's running from darkness into more darkness. The second type of person has money, position, and power, but has no wisdom or generosity. Lacking wisdom, he becomes arrogant, self-centered, and egotistical, which heralds his future downfall. He's running from light to darkness. The third type of person is in the same situation as the first one, but he has wisdom to see through his situation. He works calmly to change his situation without complaining or trying to blame others for his situation. He's moving from darkness to light. The fourth type of person is similar to the second one. He has money, position, and power, but he also has the wisdom and compassion to use these gifts generously in helping and serving others. The fourth type of person is going from light to light. This analogy provides a reliable touchstone to ensure due diligence about life's means and ends, and neatly sums up the gist of this book. During our earthly journey, may we all be so heedful and discerning to move from light to light. And may the 2 prayers quoted above, one from the Eastern wisdom, Mukti Mantra, and the other from the Western wisdom, the Serenity Prayer, serve as twin lights on our pathway to the sacred sanctuary of self-knowledge. This, then, is the true fulfillment of the Delphic oracle. Get to know yourself. The Chinese ideograph for crisis is comprised of two parts. The first part denotes danger. The second part signifies opportunity. That is, we are in danger if we miss the opportunity. What is the supreme opportunity? Realization of our self-supreme. What is the great danger? Human status is very difficult to get and very easy to lose. Carpe diem, seize the day. Life is fleeting, gone, gone. Awake, awake each one, don't waste this life. A final poem, experience the divine in the silence of your soul. When thoughts subside and mind is still, remain in this blessed state as pure awareness still. One feels like just a mass of undifferentiated whole. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. Silence is peace. Silence is joy. It is the master key that gods employ. Let its benedictions keep you whole. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. I have searched near and I have searched afar. It has only left the door of my soul ajar. Goodbye now all wanderings and resting in whole. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. There is no mention in this silence. There is no tension in this silence. There is no anxiety in this goal. There is no more becoming in this whole. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. The coming and going, the perch and the search, all are just the weariness of the soul. Your true being always remains whole. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. Not a whit of your effort can win this state. At best, your mongerings can lead you to the gate. To be invited impatiently, revel in the whole. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. This silence is the source of all creation. This silence is the goal of all creation. Silence submerged into the silent soul. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. Free and clear of mental chatter and clutter, inhere steady abidance in the supreme self utter. Rejoice in the fusion of existence, awareness, bliss, whole. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. Relinquish all distinctions of self and not self. Give up all smithing about sacred and profane. Celebrate the blissful dance of the whole. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. See through the mirage, struggle of me, my, mine, a futile toil for dream objects posing sublime. Remain content in belonging to the whole. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. Just a concept, anything anyone can think or say, a ripple in the ocean, endless of existence's sway, firmly settled in the undifferentiated whole. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. All concepts, just agitations of the mind, figments, imaginings, ghosts of some kind. all disappear in the luminosity of the whole. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. Amazing the selfsame reality sought, ever shining in the gaps between the thoughts, mind fasting and taking a respite from its role. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. Not all spiritual practices are created alike. Most remain ploys for ego's hike. Take your refuge in Mahamon's soul. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. My friend, you are complete, as is eternity's grandeur. Not a whit can be added to your perfect galore. Reclaim your majesty, be one with the whole. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. The whole world is a mirage, a juggler's show, a dream within a dream, a worm's glow. Why do you worry? Leave it to the whole. Experience the divine in the silence of your soul. Since all is all that there is nothing to accept or reject. Just be. One cannot say much more beyond this without causing mental confusion. The following title of a Zen book says it all. Open mouth, mistake already. A true seeker's life is one continuous mistake. That is, an opportunity to learn, one mistake after another.